Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live normally on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. And of course this week, because of the Monday holiday, I'm streaming today as well as Friday. So I will be streaming live at Friday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure: trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. And just want to let everyone know that Bookmap, starting yesterday, has a fun competition going on. It is the Trading Companion competition. I'll share more details with that in just a minute. I'll go to the web page, which I did post the link in Discord in the Options-Doug chat channel. All right, so a fun competition going on. More about that in just a moment. So that began yesterday, and it goes through the end of the month. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index, QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding expected trading range and volatility for the day, as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options depending on the asset, as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions or comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. And hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. Yeah, I will be streaming on Friday this week. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, September 3rd. First of all, I wanted to go over news items, economic data, and events for today as well as the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with news items. So first of all, again, the Trading Companion competition. Again, I did post this link in Bookmap Discord running from September 2nd through the 30th. 12 winners. Each winner will receive 1 month of Global Plus, spot on the Bookmap Pets 2026 calendar, and your pet featured on Bookmap's Discord for 1 month. All right, so there it is. If you're interested, just take a photo of your pet next to your trading screen, trading setup, trading desk, and then post it. All right, let's move on. All right, so let's start with news items. So I'm sure everyone is aware over the weekend the news regarding tariffs. I believe this was on Friday. Court upheld the lower court ruling that the Trump tariffs were out of bounds. He did not have the authority to issue the tariffs, so that has been put off to October 14th. Most likely may go to the Supreme Court. So there's uncertainty around tariffs again and causing some volatility in the market. All right, so today the Jolts job openings came out. I believe that was a little bit lower than expected. Didn't check that. Tomorrow, ADP employment change at 8:15. Normally comes out on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, ISM Services PMI data comes out. Normally, the ISM PMI data can be a market mover. Then after the close, tomorrow, Broadcom, AVGO reports earnings, again, after the close. Then the big data release of the week is the jobs report at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Friday. And that could definitely be a market mover. All right, let's move on to positional analysis now. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the ES Futures and Bookmap. And before I take a closer look at this chart, I'm going to step back, take a look at a higher time frame. I'm going to go to SPX, the underlying index. This is a 1-year, 1-day chart for SPX and Thinkorswim. Let's focus on the most recent price action. And notice there have been a series of pullbacks recently. 3 pullbacks, each time SPX moving up a little bit higher, but so making higher highs and higher lows with each pullback. Most recent, actually the next most recent, was the pullback after the August expiration, shown by that vertical red line. And then there was a pullback yesterday. Now SPX trying to recover. All right, so that's the most recent price action. Overall, though, the rally continues from the April lows, which was right around SPX 4,800. All right, let's take a look now at a little bit shorter time frame. Let's go to a 30-day, 1-hour chart. So here are the 3 most recent pullbacks. This one in between the July and August expiration. And then this one really started right after the August expiration on the Tuesday after the August expiration. And then this was pullback that began on Friday. But again, SPX continues to make a series of higher highs and higher lows. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. First of all, the dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. This is based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last week, last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Note SPX did trade down below the lower weekly expected move on Tuesday, the first trading day of the week, and now is trading back above. All right, then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. Hello, Mark. Welcome. Glad you're here. Don't worry about that. We're just getting started. All right, so SPX did trade up around the upper daily expected move earlier today, now trading back down below. All right, again, I do post those levels in Discord for SPX, ES, and NQ every day in Discord. All right, let's take a look at the other levels on this chart. I'm going to just point out the Spotgamma levels. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers. They're available on a variety of trading platforms. Again, I'm going to start with the key daily levels. This is the absolute gamma strike at 6,000. That's the strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. And for the most part, the absolute gamma strike has remained at 6,000 for quite a while, many months. All right, next level up is the put wall, and that is at 63.75 today, a little bit of an odd level for the put wall. That's Spotgamma's, that's a strike with large net negative gamma, and that can be expected to act as support. Note that level did move down a little bit from 6,400 yesterday. Then the next level up is the volatility trigger at 64.20. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. That level also moved lower from yesterday, just a slight move lower. So that's a bearish brace for SPX. And then the call wall remains at 6,500. That's the strike with largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. So if SPX does break above the level up above there, and above the upper daily expected move, or sometime, break above current levels, the call wall would be the next logical strike, next logical resistance level, and come back up to test that level as it did at the end of last week. All right, those are the Spotgamma levels and the expected moves. Let's wrap up our view of SPX with a with a 1 minute chart. All right, so here's the gap down yesterday. So Friday consolidation. Of course, Friday was right before the 3-day weekend. Drop down consolidation. And then a gap down yesterday. More about this in just a minute, this level. When we take a look at the SPY chart, we'll see what where that was. Then so nice drop, rally, then more consolidation today. Now SPX looks like it's making a series of lower highs, heading down toward the 64.20 volatility trigger. And note again that SPX did trade up above the upper daily expected move earlier today. Let's zoom in so you can see that a little bit more closely. All right, so again, SPX traded up above the upper daily expected move earlier today, now heading down toward the volatility trigger at 64.20. All right, so that's SPX. Let's take a quick look at SPY. SPY levels are quite important also. So let's go to SPY now. And I need to go back to SPY here. Zoom in on this. All right, so this is yesterday, the dark shaded portion over on the left here. And I did post this setup in Discord. Resistance, these levels remain unchanged from yesterday. The 640 large gamma 2 level, and support right at the 635 put wall. So that was a nice short. and then along yesterday back up to the just above the 640 level at the close, and then the movement higher continued after the close yesterday. Now it looks like SPY may be heading back down toward the 640 level. That was resistance earlier yesterday. All right, so before I move on, let's take a look at the setup from yesterday. And I do have a couple of screenshots. I did post this in Discord and on X. So this is the ES futures and Bookmap from yesterday. And this is the setup for the short right here. There's that 640 level, large gamma 2 resistance level, right at 10 a.m. And then support at the 635 put wall. And that was the primary target for that move lower. So you can see in Bookmap, as price approached that level, there are more green volume dots. Aggressive buyers started to come in. And you can see also the rising cumulative volume delta as price tagged that 635 put wall. All right, let's take a look at Hero, and more about this in just a few minutes. Let's take a look at Hero from yesterday. So there's that reversal. This is a peak reversal. It was a call peak and a put peak. And something key to note here. These Spotgamma Hero flow alerts can often signal a shift in hedging flow. In this case, in the first case, for number one there, that was a shift in positive delta notional to negative delta notional, giving you about a 10-minute warning before that reversal. Same thing down here. As price was approaching the 635 put wall, Hero flow alert, and again the hedging flow shifts from negative delta to positive delta just a few minutes later. As price again tagged that put wall and then reversed higher. All right, so that is those are the levels in play for the S&P 500. And for SPY, there was also a bearish brace. Volatility trigger and absolute gamma strike shifted lower. And now let's take a look at the levels. So this is Bookmap, ES Futures and Bookmap. And, I've spent a lot of time looking at the SPY and SPX levels. And I have those on my Bookmap chart. This level, the 6450, SPX 6450 gamma level, spot gamma level, large gamma 4, was noted as resistance in the Spotgamma AM Founders Note, and it did act as resistance. There's the SPX 6420 volatility trigger, and note price did break below the SPY 642 volatility trigger. So again, I have SPX and SPY levels noted on this chart. Note there's a difference in price between ES and SPX, and today it is actually right around 11 points. It was 10 earlier today. And I can make a quick change. This is the spreadsheet for the price lines add-on that I use. Let me just change this so it's 11 now. So that ES to SPX offset is closer to 11 now, so that'll take about a minute to update. So that's how I show the SPX and SPY levels on this chart. All right, so we'll talk about setups in just a couple of minutes. Let's move on to NASDAQ. This is the NQ Futures and Bookmap. And let's take a look at the underlying index charts. Start with QQQ. Yesterday, pretty similar to SPY. 5-point drop lower just after the open. Looks like the drop in NASDAQ was a little bit after 10 a.m., but QQQ found support at the 560 put wall, then rallied for the rest of the day, continued after hours, and now trading down today, making a series of lower highs, and just a few minutes ago traded down lows of the day. The only spot gamma level in play for today is this 570 large gamma 3 level. Let's check NDX. All right, so the only spot gamma level in play for NDX is this large gamma 2 level at 23,400. NDX also traded down to lows of the day. All right, back to Bookmap. So just like ES, I have the key index levels noted on this chart. That is QQQ and NDX. Note this cluster of levels right here. That is the NDX 23,400 large gamma 2 level that I just pointed out. And then the QQQ 570 large gamma 3 level just above that, acting as resistance. Price did break above that level, but now again acting as resistance. And that is the NQ 23,450 level sandwiched in between those two. And more about setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at the gamma for today. I'm going to go to the Trace tool. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. What this is showing, this is the gamma heat map. Red shading indicates negative gamma, blue shading positive gamma. Remember, negative gamma, we're looking for faster trending price action as market makers trade with price. And blue or positive gamma, we're looking for slower price action, mean reverting price action as traders, market makers trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. Stability index, kind of moderate to high at 71%, indicating the potential for not a whole lot of movement in the next few minutes. All right, let's step back in time. Let's see what the gamma landscape looked like earlier today. So earlier today, let's go back. So earlier today, positive gamma up above. This looks like right here at the beginning of the day, traders were short a call spread. So these gamma bars are showing market makers' position, positive gamma, blue, negative gamma. Remember, market makers take the opposite side of the trades of traders. So big blue, positive gamma is 64.45. So we'll step through in time. Blue shading, positive gamma up above. And as price moves up to that level, more positive gamma comes in up above with the dark blue shading. And SPX finds resistance at that positive gamma. Now more negative gamma up above. And then blue positive gamma down below, providing some support. So notice this is labeled the hedge wall. That's the volatility trigger that we just took a look at 64.20. So SPX finding support around that level, and then the positive gamma down below And remember, positive gamma up above earlier today acted as resistance. So this is the constantly changing gamma landscape, and this is updated every 10 minutes. Let me zoom in just a little bit. All right, so right now, blue positive gamma support below, and red negative gamma up above. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at some setups now. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. This is the ES futures and Bookmap. I'm sorry, this is the this is the Spotgamma Hero indicator here, and this is the S&P 500 indicator. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. That is SPX, SPY, XSP, and ES futures. And I've already separated out puts and calls. Orange line shows calls, blue line shows puts. So rising lines indicate traders are taking positive delta options positions. They're buying calls, shown by the orange line, selling puts, shown by the blue line. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure by buying ES futures. So what this is showing is a nice long setup in the morning, starting just after 10 a.m. That was around 10:15, as traders started buying calls, selling puts. Price moved higher until the call buyers and put sellers took the foot off the gas. Then price reversed lower as price moved up into that positive gamma zone, finding resistance there. And we can also look at the S&P 500 equity signal. And what this is showing is traders are buying calls from the open. Remember, they started buying calls in the index components right around 10:15, but they were buying calls in the S&P 500 stocks from the open. And that good bit of that was the Google news. We'll talk about it in just a minute. All right, so note the slope of the line is quite steep until about 11:10. Then it levels off. Right now, sloping down a little bit. So the call buyers start to tap on the brakes, and now they have completely taken the foot off the gas and starting to sell calls. All right, so let's go to Bookmap. I'm going to go back to the S&P 500. Zoom in. All right, so here's the long, right around 10:15. So the volume dots in Bookmap show market buy minus sell. Green magenta dots show more buyers than sellers than buyers. Note the sellers become exhausted. Aggressive buyers start to come in. That's shown by the green volume dots. Price moves up to and above this 64.50 large gamma 4 resistance level. That's when the call buyers took the foot off the gas. Heatmap is showing limit sell orders in the order book, and price starts to reverse lower as the call buyers and put sellers took the foot off the gas. And then aggressive sellers start to come in. Now that fuel that drove price higher in the morning is gone. And again, S&P 500 grinding down, making a series of lower highs, and then trading down to the 64.20 volatility trigger that I mentioned before. So right now, the S&P 500 stuck right at that 64.20 volatility trigger. Let's go back and take a look at Hero. So there's the index signal, equity signal, pretty much flattened out. Let's take a look at trace again. So again, plenty of blue positive gamma support down below. And so far the 64.20 volatility trigger seems to be holding. Or let's take a look at NASDAQ. Go back to Hero. So this is the NASDAQ signal showing the NASDAQ index components. That's NDX and QQQ that we looked at before. And remember, this is similar to the S&P 500 index signal, again showing the index components. So pretty similar to the S&P 500 index signal. Traders started buying calls. In this case, it was right around 10 a.m., so earlier, so leading the S&P 500, and then they took the foot off the gas around 10:50. Call buyers, put sellers come on board, then take the foot off the gas right around 10:50. All right, we can also look at the Mag 7 signal. So this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the stocks known as the Magnificent Seven: Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Tesla. So these stocks make, of course, a very large component of the NASDAQ and the S&P 500. Let's just compare numbers here. So this is a Mag 7 signal for 7 stocks. Call signal, 1.8 billion. Let's compare that with the S&P 500 equity signal, which is right around 2 billion. So this S&P 500 equity signal is really the 490 Mag 7 plus 493. So the call buyers, the Mag 7, had been driving most of this. All right, so the line is pretty similar. Aggressive call buying in the morning till about 10:50. Then the slope flattens out a little bit, and now it's just flat. So the call buyers have taken the foot off the gas in the Mag 7 stocks. All right, let's go to Bookmap. Let's take a look at that. Go to NQ. So this is showing price action from the open, 9:30. A little bit of chop in the morning. Again, remember the call buyers came in NASDAQ and the NASDAQ index components right around 10. Price jumps up to this cluster of levels that I talked about before. Pull back to VWAP, that light blue line. The NASDAQ makes a series of higher lows. Then there's the call buyers and put sellers take the foot off the gas, and the Mag 7 signal starts to flatten out. Price moves lower and again finds resistance at this cluster of levels. Now trading down to lows of the regular trading session. All right, any questions about the indexes? And by the way, for NDX, the volatility trigger and put wall shifted lower, so another bearish brace for NDX. And then for QQQ, the volatility trigger shifted lower. All right, let's take a look at some stocks, then we'll get to the live market. All right, I want to start with Apple. So the big news regarding stocks, I believe that came out yesterday after the close, was an antitrust ruling for Google, not as punitive as expected. So Google gets to keep Chrome and Android. And then I think the deal with Apple was also unchanged. Also, there are some changes to other arrangements with other companies. So Apple was traded higher. And this is going back to right around 6 a.m. Let's load a couple of more hours of price here so we can go back to 4 a.m. So Apple did trade higher earlier today and then traded down lower at the open. So let's go back. Let's take a look at Hero and see what happened. Or, of course, Hero is just showing options trade, so this would begin at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. There's that drop lower in Apple. Then traders, price, it looks like price started to move up first. Call buyers followed. Flow alert signals significant options activity, and Apple kind of stair steps higher, driven entirely by call buyers. For a stock, when traders buy calls, market makers sell the calls, and they have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. So that's Apple. Back to Bookmap. Let's zoom in. So we have data going back to 4 a.m. So you can see before the cash open, traders are buying Apple stock. Then it started reverse lower. Just after 7 a.m., sharp drop lower at the open. Then call buyers came in. And this 235 level is the call wall for Apple. So Apple is trading above its call wall. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Back to Bookmap. Let's go to Hero. All right, so Apple found support at the 235 call wall. All right, that's Apple. Let's take a look at Google. Of course, the main stock that was in the news with the antitrust rulings. And this is just as you might expect. A very bullish opening drive. Call buyers come in. Flow alerts right at the open. And when I see those flow alerts right at the open, I'm looking for continuation. In this case, a very bullish opening drive. And remember the slope in the Mag 7 signal. Very similar. Aggressive the open, then starts to flatten out a little bit. Also the numbers, total number for the Mag 7 was about 1.8 billion. So Google making up a significant portion of that at right around 713 million. And traders continue to buy calls in Google. So Bookmap, let's go to Google. All right, so Google also trading higher before the open. Really started moving higher right around 8 a.m. Interesting, a very bearish opening print. And then right at the open, remember those aggressive call buyers coming in. And Google jumped higher. And now trading just below the highs of the day. All right, back to Hero. All right, so no Spotgamma levels in play for Google. All right, next stock I want to take a look at is Nvidia. Pretty choppy day today. But call buyers driving price, again shown by the orange line. A couple of nice peak patterns. Key here is the 170 hedge wall. Key gamma strike support. Setting up a nice long just about 10 minutes after the open. And then a couple call peaks for short scalps. This is a very reliable bearish reversal pattern. This one accompanied by a flow alert signaling significant options activity and a potential reversal in hedging flow from, in this case, positive delta to negative delta. All right, so let's go take a look at Bookmap. So remember the reversal at the 170 level and then a couple call peaks at 10 to 10:05, 10:10, and then also at 10:50. And that's when NASDAQ started to turn over. Nvidia support at the 170 level. Let me bump up the volume dots just a little bit. So Nvidia had a bullish opening print, traded down to the 170 level, reversed higher. There's that first call peak, short scalp, and then the second call peak, setting up a little bit better short. And now Nvidia trading down right around the lows of the day, of the regular trading hours, regular trading cash session. And just like the indexes, and of course Nvidia is the largest component of the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100. So Nvidia making a series of lower highs and trading down near the lows of the day. And we'll get back to the indexes in just a couple of minutes. All right, so let's go back to Bookmap Hero. All right, so again, Nvidia trading down now below the 170 level. And the last stock I wanted to take a look at is Tesla. Very bullish day in Tesla, also finding support at the hedge wall key gamma strike, in this case for Tesla at 320. Notice also the high number here. That's almost 710 million. So in between Tesla and Google, that's making up a very large component of the Mag 7 signal, which was right around 1.8 billion. So 1.4 billion for Tesla and Google for the call signal, delta notional, positive delta notional. So Google and Tesla helping to drive the Mag 7 signal higher. Let's go take a look at Bookmap. Tesla also traded lower just at the open, but made that nice reversal at the 330. Actually traded down below the 330 hedge wall key gamma strike. Aggressive buyers started to come in. Actually, aggressive buyers were in buying from the open, shown by the rising cumulative volume delta, green volume dots. Call buyers helping to drive price higher. And now Tesla trading just below the highs of the day. All right, does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? Any questions, stocks you want me to take a look at? All right, let's check the indexes now. Let's go back to the S&P 500, see how it's doing around that 6420 volatility trigger. So chopping around that level now. Let's zoom in. So trying to find support at the 6420 volatility trigger. No, it looks like some large traders are coming in now with iceberg orders they use to hide their size. That's shown by the rising light blue line there. Let me turn on the on-chart stops and icebergs indicator. So we can get a closer look at that. It'll take a minute or so for that to load. Let's check NASDAQ while that's loading. All right, so NASDAQ trying to find support around the NQ 23,350 level. We'll zoom in. All right, let's go back, check ES. All right, so it looks like icebergs, there are some buyers and sellers. Buyers shown by this tag here, Sell is shown by this tag, but net, large traders buying with iceberg orders. I may need to zoom in a little bit to see that. Looking at the consolidated view now. All right, so that's changed a little bit. So this is showing 200 executed, 200 contracts, 2 executions. And so far, the S&P 500 can't break above the volatility trigger. All right, let's go check Hero. I'm going to shift to the total signal. Let's go back to the index signal. Looks like starting to rise higher, but still making lower highs. Check the equity signal. All right, still moving slightly lower. Let's check trace. All right, so blue positive gamma support down below. Let's check delta pressure. All right, so what this is showing is buying support, blue down below. Also blue buying support above, and then the red shading showing negative selling pressure as time as toward the end of the day today. So far, looks like SPX is trading in a kind of a neutral zone with blue buying support above and below. Let's check charm pressure. So this is showing this would show buying and selling pressure due to time decay. And definitely in a negative zone here. Remember that negative zone in the delta pressure. So let's check likely pinning targets. So we can use the charm pressure heat map to show, again, buying and selling pressure due to time decay. And then also look for potential support zones. And we would look for zones between blue buying support below and red selling pressure up above. And note how that lines up with this large positive gamma here. That is at 63.95, and that is a 99 percentile strike. So that is the target. That's the primary target if price continues to move lower today. Large blue positive gamma. Looks like that's also part of a spread. In this case, it would be a put spread. Traders short put spreads, market makers long the spread. Here that's showing at 6,400, but it is close enough to the 63.95. Let's go back to gamma. Back to Bookmap. So remember right now, ES-SPX is right around the 64.20 volatility trigger. So for this 20-point move lower down, or 25-point move lower down to the 6,400, 63.95 level, it looks like the options traders would need to step on the gas and start buying puts and selling calls. So let's go back, check Hero again. All right, anyone have any questions, comments, stocks you want to take a look at? Go to Hero. All right, so that's the equity signal. Still continues to move lower. And that is a change from from earlier today. Very bullish, slightly bullish, now bearish. Go to the index components. And this is moving up just a little bit right now. So for price to break lower, this index signal will also need to move lower. But so far it looks like the 6420 volatility trigger is holding and the positive gamma down below. Let's check NASDAQ. NASDAQ also chopping around Mag 7, just like the S&P 500 equity signal. Bullish, slightly bullish, now bearish. But the index is holding support. S&P 500 continues to chop in a narrow range. All right, let's take a look at a few stocks. So again, Broadcom reports earnings after the close yesterday, tomorrow. So let's see how traders are positioning. So very slight. Positive delta notional, 12.73 million. At least that's how they're positioning today. And Broadcom holding right above the 300 key gamma strike. And Wayne, welcome. Glad you're here. Wayne asks, do you ever utilize fib levels in your trading? Wayne, I do not. A couple things. First of all, so I've looked at a lot of things over the years, and I have decided to focus on one approach to keep things simple, to avoid confusion, to avoid conflict. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with fib levels, although the traders that taught me to trade options had a particular disdain for fib levels and really any form, almost any form of technical analysis. So I'm coming into this with that with that mindset. But again, the main point is I have decided to focus on just options levels to avoid conflict and confusion with any other levels. So no, I do not look at fib levels. And thanks for asking. All right, back to the S&P 500. Still grind sideways. Really stuck at that volatility trigger level. Let's check NASDAQ. NASDAQ signal continues to move lower, but NASDAQ also holding. Mag 7 signal continues to move lower. All right, so now it looks like the S&P 500 may be trying to break above the 6420 level. Let's check some stocks to see if they're going to help the move higher. Apple, not so much. Amazon, no, not so much. Also moving a little bit lower. Definitely weaker than Apple. All right, Google holding definitely above the open, but below the highs of the day. Let's check Meta. All All right, Meta back down toward lows of the day. Microsoft. Also lows of the day. Nvidia. Definitely trading lows of the day. It's broken down below that 170 hedge wall key gamma strike that we looked at earlier today. Tesla. Let's see how that's holding up. Also trading down. Now trading below VWAP. All right, so overall, I would say now the Mag 7 stocks are looking a little bit weaker. And so far, not necessarily reflected in the NQ. Yes. Also trying to move higher. Looks like more buy iceberg orders executed. Let's go back, check Hero. Start with the S&P 500 index signal. Looks like trying to grind a little higher. Equity signal. Still lower. Again, remember what we saw in the Mag 7 stocks. Most trading lower right now. NASDAQ index signal also trading lower. And of course, Mag 7 also moving lower. But the index is stuck pretty stubbornly at current levels. Let's check trace. Again, positive gamma support down below. All right, back to Bookmap. All right, last call, questions, comments, stocks. All right, so the S&P 500 trying to grind higher. After chopping around the 6420 volatility trigger for about a half an hour. Mark says, thank you. Mark, you're welcome. Good to see you here. All right, so remember, coming up this week, tomorrow, ISM services PMI. Broadcom reports earnings after the close. And then the big data release of the week is the jobs report, 8:30 a.m. And now with the Fed's focus shifted more to jobs, that could be a very important number. And it could confirm the recent weakness in the jobs market. And then of course, we'll talk about that on Friday. One last check of NASDAQ. Still chopping right in the middle of the 567 to 568 level. which is NQ 23,350 right in the middle. All right, everyone, I want to thank you for watching. Oh, now look at this drop. Back to the 64.20 level. Choppy price action. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. Have a great afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday. Bye.